Welcome everyone to this outstanding panel. I'm Kim Quillen, I'm with the Chicago Tribune. It's my pleasure to be here. I am sharing the stage with an excellent panel of individuals, each of whom has deep expertise in a different workplace issue. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation, and I can't wait to get you introduced to this panel. So why don't we start, and everyone take a moment to introduce yourself, maybe share your name, the company you're with, the role that you play at the company, and we'll start with Crystal and then work down the line.
Sure. My name is Crystal T. Jones, and I am the head of talent acquisition for Deere, John Deere.
Okay. My name is Trevor Bogan. I'm Regional Director of Americas for Top Employers Institute.
My name is Gustavo Viano. Everybody call me Gas. I'm originally from Argentina. My background is in psychology, organizational and clinical psychology, and I am the head of global D&I at Brink.
Hi, I'm Mikki and I lead Total Rewards at JLL. Just for those that don't know JLL, it's a global commercial real estate firm, investment management company that has over 100,000 employees and operates in 80 plus countries. For the last 200 years, we have helped clients buy, manage, occupy, and invest in various different properties such as commercial, industrial, hotel. Our differentiators are that we bring the power of a global platform combined with local expertise, as well as we're driven by our purpose of shaping the future of real estate for a better world.
Thank you. So let's jump right in. We've got an interesting conversation ahead of us. I'll start by saying it's no secret that companies with a purpose-driven work environment are, by many measures, more successful. I'd love to hear from each of you about how you accomplish that. How do you successfully create a purpose-driven work environment? Could you share maybe each one example of something that your company has done to accomplish this? And we'll start with Crystal.
Sure. Deere has been in existence for close to 186, 187 years. So primarily for the last 200 years, we've had 4 core values: quality, integrity, innovation, and commitment. Just yesterday, we added a new value to our organization. So imagine existing for 200 years and then adding another value. And that value is humanity. And so when you think about who we are as an organization and how it's articulated, it means that we will treat our people and our planet with dignity and respect. And that means that we create environments that are inclusive, that are very much diverse, and that we have practices that are internally sustainable as well as externally sustainable.
Very good. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, that was tough. Jeez.
Yeah.
That was really good. I like that. Yeah. No, I think for us, it's really talking about purpose and keeping that communication going, right? So, 5 years ago with my organization, we were 60 people, and now we're 255 people. And that changes things, the dynamics of what people look for in purpose, how they like to work. We sent a survey out to our group as we're adding a ton of talent within our organization and really wanted to try to understand why. Like, why do they want to work for our organization? What's their purpose to bring to life within our organization? And we redefined that and shifted that. And so everything we do, we inspire with purpose. So we're going to give you data and analytics around your HR practices, and we're going to bring purpose with that. We're going to bring value to that because we know in HR, you're the catalyst of if an organization really does well or not. The programs that you put in place, the initiatives that you give your people bring success, bring more productivity, bring more wellness. And so I think the big thing with purpose is continue to talk about it. Don't be afraid. And it can evolve and it can shift. And you don't have to have, your purpose can be from 200 years ago, but is that going to move the needle now? Because everything's evolving. So keep the communication going.
At Brink is a little bit different in the sense the company, when I started 3 years ago, when the company started in the journey of diversity and inclusion, and many companies started after the pandemic. So the company has a new CEO, is going through a big transformation. So what we have done is we have engaged our employees around the globe through a survey and collecting their voices, understanding how they want to to be different, treated different, what they're looking for, etc. But I think a better example is when I was at McDonald's. McDonald's Corporation, I worked there for 15 years. And it was very interesting. What we did there, we had like a week-long conference where we not only engaged our global leaders, we brought them all to Oak Brook, that's where the company used to be, the headquarters used to be. But we also invited community leaders representing different diversity groups, from large organizations like the NAACP, LULAC, etc., other organizations. And all together, getting their input and outlook of what these demographic groups were looking for. That's how the company developed their purpose, engaging not just customers outside of the company, but also the internal customers. So that was what made McDonald's very successful. They are very successful to this day, was the connection they have, not just with the external customer, but the representation of the external customer internally.
Great. It sounds like it's about creating that sticky purpose, right? That is relatable and meaningful to people. As I mentioned earlier, JLL's purpose is to shape the future of real estate for a better world. And for us, that's about creating healthy, inspiring, innovative spaces for people and our planet. With 40% of our carbon emissions coming from the built environment, we have a critical role in helping create a sustainable world. And that manifests itself in many different ways. Many of our clients also have net zero commitments that they have, but they need our help to help define the path to get there. So that's another way that we're connected to our purpose of driving a better world. We also set internal sustainability goals, and we basically use, from a leadership perspective, leaders are focused on those goals, but also we connect our employees to those goals by robust training efforts like net zero carbon trainings, as well as AI and automation. And last year we saw a 20% reduction in our carbon emissions through these efforts. So we're linking back to our purpose all the time. And as Trevor, you said, it's about communication and that linkage back.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very interesting to hear from each of you. A lot of the meaning and purpose of a company is conveyed through the behavior of its leaders. What kind of development have you done lately to make leaders aware of that and enhance their skills on that front? Mikki, would you like to share your insights on that?
Sure. We recently launched leadership behaviors across the organization that were developed by a conjunction of a diverse group of leaders to help leaders really think and act as a unified body to support our common purpose and our business outcomes. Our behaviors are win together, inspire, be intentional, simplify, and be future ready. As Trevor said, it's always evolving, so that's been really important. We've already embedded our behaviors through recent leadership incentive plan design changes that we've made, showcasing them in leadership meetings, as well as planning to embed them in our talent review process, performance management process, as well as development programs throughout the organization. There's a great deal of momentum behind these behaviors, and our hope is that as leaders fully start to embody them, that eventually it will start to disseminate across the organization, and the sense of belonging to the enterprise will be enhanced as a result.
Very interesting. Gus, what do you think about this?
It's interesting. I am about to get involved on a global tour training on inclusive leadership. And it's very interesting because for the past 2 years, the first training we rolled out was about diversity and inclusion for managers. But it was not surprising to see that most leaders had good intentions. They were very involved with the training, but also at the same time, when they have to, if you want to call displays inclusive behavior, that was not the case. The status quo was pretty much the same. So I purposely developed this training that I'm going to be delivering in person to these leaders, starting in Asia and then going all around the world to Europe, North Africa, Latin America, and making sure that we have these difficult conversations about how you translate good intentions into actions. Because really employees, they feel engaged when they hear our leaders talk about D&I, but then when they see their behavior not represented in their actions, then they have, serious doubts. And it's not because the leaders don't have, good intentions. I always say my role as a D&I, more than anything, my role, it's important to mention, I work mainly with C-suite leaders, okay? Not just at work, but in my personal life too. Most of my friends are C-suite leaders. And you have to understand the politics involved with the decisions that they make. So my advice, my coaching has to take that under consideration. So I always say my role is very political. And in going to do this work outside of the US, as you probably know, diversity inclusion is very different outside. You have to take everything under consideration and be very thoughtful of how you talk about inclusive leadership. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you, Gus. I'm mindful of time, so I'm not going to invite every panelist to answer this one, but I'm going to move on to another good question. And Gus, I'm hoping you can start out our conversation on this one. For employees to feel like work is meaningful and purposeful, they do need to feel included and have a sense of belonging. Yet DEI programs recently have faced some significant headwinds. Gus, I'm wondering if you could just start us off by talking briefly about the role that an inclusive approach to management plays in cultivating a purpose-driven workforce. And to some extent, how do you think these efforts should be built into the structure of a company?
Right. So let me start by the last part, which I think is how do you build it into a structure, because it's one of my favorite topics. And I have to start by saying D&I is not HR. Let's make that very clear. I don't know why there is such a confusion. We are not HR, okay? Secondly, we are not supposed to report to HR, but conveniently, because many times the leaders don't know where D&I had to be positioned in the organization, that's where we have historically have been. But in my case, like in the case of many other D&I practitioners, I had the opportunity to work with companies where we reported directly to the CEO. And that implies significant different experience, not just for the department of D&I, but also for every employee in the company and the leaders. And the reason why is because, the leader of the company, the CEO in this case, was directly involved with every decision that we made. We had our own budget, so nobody had to decide what we're gonna get to make things happen. And also because we got more respect. When you sit at the C-suite where the decisions are made and you have a direct connection with business decisions, now you can impact the business, right? Which means that you are no longer on the menu, you are making money, so you are on the table. And with that said, that's one of the things I want to emphasize. I think for historically, D&I have been in the organization in terms of the structure, positioned in a line of reporting that is not helpful to us. Secondly, in terms of how to engage employees and make sure that they feel involved, going back to what we've been talking about, is how do you give them a voice to make sure that they can express themselves. I always say people don't leave their diversity in the trunk of their car when they come to work. They bring the whole self to work, invited or not invited, they bring it to work. So the question is, how can they speak about it, how they can express themselves about it, right? And one way to do that is obviously working with the leaders. I have to tell you the truth, in my work, and obviously probably because I use my toolbox of psychological background, I've been a psychologist now for almost 50 years. My approach is to make sure I have serious, deep conversations with the most important leaders in the company, and I help them change the way they think. I have to tell you the truth. Some of those conversations, they tell me things they are afraid of telling the public, right? Especially if they are talking with somebody from HR. So you have to make sure you develop trusting relationships and that people, most important than anything, that employees feel trusted and that they can trust those leaders with whatever they can tell them.
Very good. Trevor, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah. So we did a survey and we partner with 2,300 organizations all across the globe. And, 41% of those organizations said DE&I is really an important topic that they need to be discussing. And so a couple reasons why is people have changed. The way Gen Z looks at, I want to work with people that look like me, that feel like me, that have experiences like me. And I want leaders to be empathetic and vulnerable around those conversations. And so they really want to work with people that understand them. And we see a lot of data and information out there when organizations have a diverse workforce, when they have women in leadership, when they have people of color, when they have people from different countries and different perspectives, the profitability goes up, the well-being goes up, the purpose, the feeling of belonging goes up. And so there's a very famous coach here, Phil Jackson. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's done some things in Chicago. But if you think about the Bulls in that prime time period, think about the differences they had. They had Michael Jordan, they had Dennis Rodman, they had Scottie Pippen, they had Steve Kerr. They had all these diverse backgrounds. And the good thing about what Phil Jackson was is he was a coach. And so a lot of leaders have to look at a coach, right? I've got to talk to people, I've got to understand them, and I've got to get the best thing out of them to win championships. Now, we can win a certain amount of games, and that's good, we're winning, but to win championships is different. And so you almost have to look at your organizations as a coach. Find different people. It works. It brings success. Different from people, work ethics, social economics, neurodivergent candidates, all these things can work and intermix in the same ecosystem. But you have to have the conversations around it. You've got to look at it, and you've got to continue to challenge it. And what we're finding too is leaderships are building this into their KPIs. They're held accountable for, am I interviewing people that are different? Is my workforce different that I'm working with? Because that brings success. And I know that's challenging and I know that's uncomfortable sometimes, but I do it myself. I don't want everyone to look and feel like me or grew up like me. I don't want everyone like that because I want to win championships. I want to be successful, yes, but if you're looking at revenue, yeah, I can make $2 million, but could our company make $50 million by what we're doing right now to change that? But you have to remember that candidates, that's what they're looking for. It's no longer what's written on your website. I want to see and feel that it's what you're saying. And that's a difference maker when we're talking about purpose.
Right. Thank you. Speaking of purpose, in order to have a sense of purpose, employees need to see a connection between their daily work, their daily labor, and the impact that it's having on the world outside the workforce. How do you best convey that, Crystal?
Sure. I'll give you 2 examples. I work for Deere. We make sure that farmers can produce food for the world. And so today there are probably about 8 billion people on the planet. By 2050, we estimate that there will be close to 10 billion. And so when you think about that, I don't know about you, but I like to eat. And so what is that? what does that mean? But thinking beyond us and us assisting farmers to make sure that they're able to yield more from the farmland that they have. People don't necessarily think about Deere from a construction and forestry perspective. So you see the green and yellow, you don't always recognize the black and yellow. And so we, in addition to food, we also make sure that there's fiber, that there's fuel, and that we're building infrastructures because there's no more land being built. So what do you get to derive from the land that's here? So that's one example. I would say the other example is in 2020, we developed the LEAP Coalition. And so people aren't necessarily familiar with that. When you think about how do you use your power, not just your responsibility, but how do you leverage your power to help people both internally and externally? What does that mean for an organization? And so the LEAP Coalition was developed in conjunction with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, Centers for Heirs Property, and others. And it stands for legislation, advocacy, education, and then production systems. And so we help farmers, Black farmers particularly, get their land back into the rightful hands. In 1910, there were probably about 60 million acres of farmland that belonged to Black people. Today it's 4. And so you wonder what happened, how did that happen? How do you unlock the economic value from that land? You give it back to the people that it belongs to.
Thank you. That's interesting. Mikki, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Powerful. I think just hearing that it's connecting to so easily for people, right? And for JLL, it's something similar in a different way. So, you know, our employees live in their impact every day, in our impact from a JLL perspective. In the developed world, employees are impacted by real estate. 90% of employees are impacted by real estate on a daily basis. So if you think about it, from the places we work, this building that we're in now, the places we eat, the places we shop, the places we live, all of those are things that we as JLL have a significant impact on, from the amenities that exist in there, from the functionality that exists, from the sustainability aspects and the efficiency aspects. And because we operate buildings in every major industry, we have a significant link to the efficiencies of the economy as well. So, for example, if we improve the efficiency of a commerce warehouse, they can deliver and fulfill orders much faster. So there's a monumental impact there that we can have on the world. And our employees take this very seriously, and they really strive to shape the future of sustainable practices and innovative technology because they know the power that can deliver to the world.
Thank you. It's kind of inspiring, you guys. I want to circle back to something Trevor touched on just a few minutes ago. Let's talk for a moment about measuring success. So you're trying to, you're putting a lot of effort in to create this purpose-driven workforce. How can you tell if you're being successful? Are there certain key performance indicators, benchmarks? How do you measure? It seems like a very difficult thing to measure.
It is really difficult, and this is how we can really help you as an organization, because we measure all of that for you. You need data and analytics, right? And I think that's the key with everything that you're looking at, because what we find with a lot of organizations is they just try things. They just want to try and see what really works. And you really need to get involved with data and analytics to see and measure what you do really well and what challenges you have. And that's really impactful because the numbers don't lie, right? They tell the story. And that's okay if the story is not where you want it to be. But then you can help strategize those conversations. You can give yourself a lot of time back from just, I just want to see if this works. Because people are always working differently. And you have to be able to measure those things in order to build programs that work. If you're looking at budget, you have to have metrics and numbers to say, okay, here's where we stack up. Here's where we measure. Here is why we need to build more programs in this rather than XYZ. Here's the reasons why we need to do that. And you owe it to your internal people. That's what they want. They want people who are evolving and growing. They want organizations that try. They know we're not all perfect. We don't all work for perfect companies. But the companies that try, the companies that listen to their employees, get them involved in certain programs and projects, give them a voice. But the organizations that really measure that and get data and analytics and use it and talk about it and bring it into meetings with everyone within the organization. So I have meetings with my product team, my marketing team, my accounting team, technology, everyone, because we need to know what works. How can we effectively work in this ecosystem together? And we don't believe in siloing. We don't want to silo, because if we silo, then we're not getting better. We're not learning about how we work. We're not learning about new things that we're implementing that can really help. We're not hearing different ideas. We're not hearing different perspectives. And you really have to be cognizant and recognize that piece in order to get better. So numbers help shape that.
Yeah. At Deere, do you use numbers? How do you measure success?
Absolutely. So one of our pillars is that we make data-driven decisions. And so you cannot walk into a meeting at Deere unless you have what I like to call receipts. And so if you're asking for things, you need to be able to have quantitative information to support it. From our global performance management system, we also measure not only what you do, but how you do it, which is also a qualitative measure. So you get measured at the end of the year, again, not just how you perform or what you did, but how you performed. We also have engagement surveys. I'm sure plenty of you also use those within your respective organizations. And a lot of times people issue engagement surveys, but then they don't take the information and do something with it. Our value humanity was a part of, here's the information, you've gotten it back. people is missing from your core values. And so we added humanity as a response to some of those engagement surveys. So just making sure that you're asking the questions, but being ready to deal with the responses that you get back.
Thank you. Thank you. We were talking before this started, Mikki and I, about real estate and kind of the shift to remote work. I'm kind of curious, we are at a period where many employees are still working remotely. Curious, being in a real estate firm, how does that affect, operations? How has that changed or, impacted, I guess, the ability to cultivate a purpose-driven workforce? How has that played out at JLL, and what are you kind of seeing in the real estate space?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think something that a lot of companies are grappling with, but offices continue to be the center of the work ecosystem, and that remains true for JLL as well, as the office is the primary place of work. That being said, we've always supported flexible working needs and will continue to do so going forward. As we're doing for our clients, we're focusing on creating those welcoming spaces that really have the right amenities, the right functionality, and the right culture to welcome employees back. We know nothing beats those in-person interactions to create those smarter solutions. And being together helps us learn, grow, and thrive. And really through those unexpected opportunities to collaborate and innovate, and also with those outside of our normal teams, which I think a virtual environment kind of forces you to do a bit. So, we've even a recent Bloomberg study showed that those in the office actually spent 25% more time on career development, which I thought was actually a staggering number. So if you think about it, it really helps you grow as if you're in the office. The other thing that we focus on is the human side of it, the human connection side of it, the sense of belonging and the fun that comes from being in the office, the personal interactions, the sharing of stories of your families or your hobbies. You can't really have a water cooler talk, right, in a virtual setting. So that's the other side of what we were also focused on. Knowing that collaboration and innovation are key, though, we are also thinking about the fact that a large part of many employees' daily time is spent on focused tasks. So we are really being deliberate about creating the me spaces as well as the we spaces. Because that purpose-driven, sort of built environment that caters to the realities is really what's driving the engagement and the adoption of returning to the office.
The me space versus the we space. That's interesting. I need more me space, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, it does. It's not just you.
Gus, how is at Brink's? How is this shift to remote work playing out in terms of?
It's complicated, Younger people don't like it, and they don't like the hybrid work, and it's interesting. The pandemic changed everything. I think we're still changing, right? And now we have a new player, which is AI, which is going to change things even more. And I say for diversity inclusion was a significant change. In my life, I've been doing D&I for 25 years, and I love these interactions in person. And my life before the pandemic was all, in person, right? The ERG activities, the events, networking, the community events, the dinners, the galas. And then, the pandemic happened, and now everything is different, right? So we're trying to come back. And what happened is a lot of people discovered they can work different. And what I say, Brinks is complicated with, younger people. You should see my friends outside of Brinks, which, they are in their mid-50s, and they all want to retire. So, it's very interesting what's happening. I think we're still learning. But one thing for sure, people are different, and like you said, you're talking about work, I like work. Look, listen, when I work to do consulting with Nike, for example, if you ever visit the Nike campus in Portland, it's a beautiful place. You don't want to live there, you want to live there, you just want to work, you want to live in that campus. But in other places, it's like, you don't want to go to the office, it's very plain, nothing much is happening. I am a person, I have to tell you, I don't like offices. I work much better. I like to go to the office to interact. My problem is when I go to the office, I spend a lot of time socializing. So I waste a lot of time in being productive, right? And then at home, when I work in my office, I'm much more productive. So I got to tell you, I think this is where my, again, psychology background comes into place. I think we're still evolving around that. And I think new generations probably are going to dictate what this is at the end going to be like. But technology, again, is also going to dictate how we're going to work. Because, there was a lot of advancement that happened after the pandemic. We're still using it, and it's providing the opportunity to connect in ways we didn't have before. If you are a person with disabilities today, you have amazing opportunities. Like I mentored somebody that is quadriplegic, an attorney. And that person today has the ability to work from home and do things that he never imagined he could do as an attorney before. So there are a lot of opportunities here.
I've got to ask, you work for a big company with multiple sites. How has it played out at Deere, the remote workplace?
A combination of both, but we were also very intentional when we called people back into the office. And so I'd say COVID and during the transition, we opened up sites in places where people would naturally gravitate going to work. So we opened a tech center right here in Chicago in Fulton Market. We opened a tech center in downtown Austin. And so those places lend more easily to people being able to come into an office. Mm-hmm. And then we also set up an infrastructure so that they felt like it was a place they wanted to be. We have coffee on tap, we have kombucha on tap, we have beer on tap. Now you can't go back to work after you drink it. And for me, it was the ice machine. And so we make sure that the environments are inviting and engaging and that there's things for people to do. So on Tuesdays, they get breakfast. On Thursdays, we have lunch. Once a month, there's a happy hour. And so that really makes sure that there is some collaboration within the office. We also have spaces that we consider to be co-location. And so while employees may sit in Chicago, their managers sit in Moline. And so we have a shuttle that brings them back and forth from Moline to Chicago, Chicago to Moline, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it makes it easy for people to collaborate and work with each other.
I gotta say, your weed places sound pretty fun.
It is. It is. I did not win the coin toss during March Madness, but it was good.
What role, changing gears here a little bit, what role do rewards like promotions, awards, financial incentives play when it comes to motivating worker behavior and creating a purpose-driven workplace? Mikki, you're in charge of rewards over at JLL. You want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Recognizing and rewarding employees is integral to our culture. We aim to provide recognition in a variety of ways to really ensure that employees feel included, inspired, and appreciated for doing their best work. And from a rewards perspective, we really cater our delivery based on persona type so that we ensure that the reward is meaningful for the individual. Our rewards are linked to business purpose and performance, conducting individual, team, and organizational performance so that when we deliver the best solutions for our clients, JLL does well, and so do our employees. Now, I've been in the total reward space for a long enough time to know that compensation alone is not the driver of influencing sort of behaviors. And it's often the first one that people go to because it's the, when there's an employee problem, right? It's the easiest, most direct solve. We've all been there, right? Let's throw money at it and it's going to fix the problem. But I have seen too many times that from a long-term perspective, it doesn't solve it. And really, it's all about the cohesion of all the other aspects that, Trevor, you've been speaking about quite a bit. It's the culture, it's the purpose, it's that leadership inspiration. There's just so many aspects of it that kind of pull it together.
Yeah, Trevor, I would love to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I think it's really talking to your people. How do they like to be rewarded? So we've all worked in organizations where there was one way to be rewarded, right? And that didn't resonate well with me. It might have resonated with other people, but Learn from your employees what they like to feel, what they like to be rewarded with. So it builds more camaraderie, builds more purpose with them. When we talk to our employees and I'm on the commercial team, they wanted to be recognized in front of the executives, in front of their peers. That was a big thing for them. And it wasn't just having an email sent out. They wanted to get together and have those announcements made. And so we did our first commercial team kickoff meeting where the whole 100 of us in the commercial team were together. And we recognized newcomer of the year, an internal colleague that everyone voted for. And those things are really inspiring when people can get up in front of their peers, be recognized, get an award. And that's where people feel connectivity. That's where people feel, but you need to understand what that looks. And to Mikki's point, if you're just rewarding people off of a product or money, that's not everyone's motivation. That doesn't inspire everyone or give people purpose. So make sure you're really diving in with your employees to really understand what rewarding looks like to them and really build onto that and make that happen and bring action to it.
Crystal, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. I would say for us, it's making sure that our employees have the right projects, that they have purpose-driven work, and that they have the right level of exposure. We typically lead to or lend into a total compensation package. And so most, if not all of our employees are on some sort of incentive program. So if the company performs well, then they also receive the benefits of the company performing well. And then for us, you can see a path. And so Josh Jepson, who I absolutely adore, is our Chief Financial Officer. Josh Jepson joined Deere as an intern. And so if you look at the demographics of Deere, most of our employees who sit in senior roles or who progress, we only hire about 25 to 30% of people outside of the walls of Deere. And so if people feel like they have a path, that they feel like there's a way forward or success, then that typically helps incentivize them to stay.
I want to follow up with you, Crystal. Your company has done some interesting things with technology. How do you harness the power of technology?
Well, I think I mentioned that by 2050, there will be 10 billion people here, and there's not any more land being made. And so we use technology from a data perspective, from an autonomous vehicle perspective, from information that goes into the cloud to make sure that we are providing our farmers, the people who help grow the food, being able to do more with less. And so we have machines that can go over a piece of grass to determine, it's called precision ag, to determine if it is a weed or if it's something that needs to stay. And so that means that farmers are using less fertilizer. So they are, again, being able to do more. We have data that goes from those machines that goes into the cloud, and it can tell a machine, stop, turn here, stop, go straight. We have machines that operate without human interaction. And so that means there aren't many more people entering into farming. And so how does a farmer till their land, but also do other administrative tasks? Well, they can do that from their phone. They can do that from watching a football game, because those machines operate autonomously. So we use technology quite a bit. We probably we do hire, I should know that. We hire more technology people than we do anything else.
Very good. We have only a couple minutes left, so I'm going to end with a speed round, give you each a chance to weigh in on this. I'm curious if there's a company out there that really wants to foster a purpose-driven work environment. Maybe it's not something that they've done before. Maybe they haven't focused on it before. What is one step that they can do to take a step towards that? Mikki, let's start with you.
Simply creating meaningful, relatable, crisp purpose is a great place to start, and often really difficult to do. So just sitting down and focusing on that, I think, is a great place to start. And the other piece is, once you've got that, really embedding it deeply, living it daily, so that employees see it, can embed it in what they do to fully realize it.
Very good. Gus.
I think if the company is just starting, my favorite motto is, more important than counting heads is to make heads count.
Okay.
Is to make sure they pay an effort in doing what you were saying, is getting to know what the internal customers are expecting from them. So understanding who are your people, what they want, where they want to go, what opportunities they expect, and what development they need is the most important. People will never forget how you make them feel. That's the most important.
Very good. Trevor.
Yeah, I think it's to Mikki's point, defining it, really understanding the why behind the purpose that you're trying to create. And I think Gus talked about a little bit around the behaviors. What are the behaviors that you want to have people implement day in and day out to align with that purpose? And remember that purpose can always evolve and change. It's okay. It doesn't need to be something that's stuck 20 years ago. Purpose needs to evolve, it needs to change, and you need to have communication around that and constant, healthy, psychologically safe talks around what purpose looks like. And that's okay too, because employees internally want to know that the purpose can evolve. But define it, and just continue to talk about it.
Thank you, and we'll give the last word to
Sure.
our friend.
I think you have to be willing to fail. And so at Deere, again, we are very Midwestern, very Midwestern-centric, Midwestern values. And so that means when things happen like a George Floyd, or when you're trying to move the company forward, you've got to step out of yourself and say, how do I use my power? And even if it means I fail, then I take the responsibility of that, but I'm trying to move the company forward. And so you've got to be willing to fail and accept what comes along with it.
That's a great point to end on. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Trevor, Gus, Mikki. Excellent conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.